What's up, race fans? Thank you for joining us for the IndyCar Kickoff Fantasy League preview slash salary reveal of the IndyCar drivers. I'm Mike GP, CTO of Grid Rival. With me today, I have Ryan Booth, Director of Business Operations, William Laddie, Principal Software Engineer, and special guest, the one, the only, Chase Holden. So before we get kicked off today, just want to say, Grid Rival for this season is the official fantasy app of IndyCar. We couldn't be more stoked, more excited to have everyone from the IndyCar community coming over, discovering Grid Rival, playing the game, getting competitive, and just having a good time with us. So we're excited for all of you to be here. Tell your friends, bring everyone in. Our app could take it. We could have tens of thousands of people in leagues if we want. So get those share links out there to your friends, your family. Let's build this thing and bring this NASCAR season to the next level. So we're here to discuss salaries for the game. But before that, anyone from our crowd here have anything to share before we get right into the content?
No, it's
I
been a
want
long
to
off.
say something.
Go ahead. Yeah.
What's up? I'm stoked. I just want to say thanks for having me here, being a part of this. I know you guys have been working incredibly hard on the with IndyCar this year, getting them, getting a game for IndyCar fans that was, I guess, was way more in depth than what was there before. And that goes not just for IndyCar, but for, NASCAR F1. It's just, it's refreshing to see a company and a group of guys like yourself that are able to kind of put this stuff together for race fans. So I'm really excited to be here, really excited to be a part of what you guys are building and ready to kick things off and get more people excited and amped up for the season and for fantasy motorsports again. So thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man, happy to have you. You got me fired up on that.
We're ready.
We're ready. All right. Also, for everyone on the live stream, get your questions into the chat. We will answer them live. It could be driver questions, strategy questions, app questions. Doesn't really matter. Just get your questions in there, and we'll get them answered. So let's kick it off right on the top. Ryan, do you want to kick us off with some of the top five, and we'll go from there?
Yeah. So anyone familiar with Indy, I think there's a pretty clear pecking order of the drivers, and you start with that top five with Palou, Power, Dixon, McLaughlin, Newgarden. That's the exact order that we have them in, but they're fairly interchangeable up here. I think Palou is clearly deserving of the number one spot, of which we've made him that 30 million top driver, defending champion. I think he more than deserves it, and then you can kind of get a little picky from 2 through 5, probably depending on the track and where you're at feeling that. But yeah, I think it's only right to start with Alex Palou, the defending champion.
Yeah, Palou up top, like easy choice. Won the championship last year. He's always a championship threat. And so put him up top. And if you're taking him, you're betting on him to perform at that level. So he's got to deliver. Not a lot of upside there as far as salary, but certainly a lot of points available, being theoretically the best driver in the series. And 2 through 5, like we debated that a little bit over here. Like really any order of those 4 drivers, Power, Dixon, McLaughlin, Newgarden. Like if you gave me a different order, I wouldn't say that's crazy. So pick who you like is what I would say there.
Yeah.
And I think we got a lot of championship threats up there.
Yeah.
And lots of potential race winners every week.
William, could I have you explain something to the fans? Alex Palou, championship driver, ranked number 1, 30 million. What happens if Alex Palou finishes below first position on the app for St. Pete?
Alex Palou will very, very likely lose value in that scenario. So the way the values work, so the values that the salaries that you see in the app right now are for going into St. Petersburg. Once St. Petersburg happens, that first race of the year, those salaries are going to change. They're going to change after every one of these races all year, all 17 of them. So what happens is the salary changes are based on how many fantasy points you score. Whoever scores the most fantasy points is going to be slotted at that top tier. They're not going to jump all the way to 30 million, but they are going to move in that direction. So you score a lot of fantasy points, you're going to get one of those top slots. Your salary is going to move up, or maybe it's going to stay the same if you were up top already. If you have a bad day, your salary is going to go down.
Yes. Important part of the strategy.
There is some gold. Like as we get further down the grid today, like there's going to be some opportunities to strike gold, and that's the real fun of this game.
I'll say just to hop in here with where we are going with these guys in this top bracket. You know, like we just got done watching Sebring. Obviously, they had the test for 2 days, Monday, Tuesday. Some of those time sheets came out, and I learned personally that Sebring is a great way for them to prepare for this street course race because of just how rough that course is at Sebring. So when we were looking at the data yesterday, I mean, it's you always want to lean Penske, I feel like. And I mean, we've had Marcus Ericsson won this race 2 years ago. And then we had the Joseph Newgarden win, even though all the stuff happened months later down the line. I think what's important here to look at is, especially with the Contracts League, is that we've got a pretty big gap after this race until our next run, which will be Thermal Club. So, when you're signing these contracts, I feel like it really will give people playing kind of an edge to where maybe you don't have to extend all the way out, because the real first oval that we're going to have is going to be, the Indy 500. So you've got nothing but street course races. You got to look for those guys up top, which makes Pelot at 30 million kind of the guy. And then I would probably say the other one that I would be looking at right now in this exact moment is probably Scott McLaughlin. So he's that's just a little bit of my take, kind of like because of the gap that we do have in the schedule and how you can play this as strategically as possible.
The other thing to consider is that you can sign drivers between 1 and 5 races. Whenever a driver's contract expires, you cannot sign them for the next race. There is a 1 race cooldown. I'll put it out there now. The Indy 500 is race number 6 this season. So you lock one of those guys up for 5 races, you're going to have them out for Indy. And so it'd be a little bit choosy as far as your contract lengths for that reason. You want to have some of these top oval threats available when we get to the Indy 500. Even though it's 3 months from now, we got to start thinking about it now.
Yeah.
Along those lines, we had a great question in the chat from Pat Kelly. What's the advantage of signing for more than 1 race?
Ooh, it's a great question.
This is where we can start to get into. Obviously, you accumulate fantasy points, but another big part of our game is value. And what we talked about with Pelot potentially losing value, there are a lot of drivers where if they overperform kind of where they're projected to finish, they're going to gain value. And right now, everyone starts with a $100 million budget, but any gains that you make on a weekly basis roll into your team budget, essentially. So if you have a driver whose salary goes up $2 million, that next week you have another $2 million to play with. So the big part of team building is the more value you're able to add, the more you're able to increase your budget, the more money you have to play with. And we've seen in the past, like with our F1 league, people putting together competitive lineups throughout the year. Halfway through the season, their team value instead of 100 million is now 120, which gives an extra 20 million is a lot of money to play with. You're going to be able to field a much more competitive team, score a lot more points. So a big part of this is building your team value up so you're able to roster more competitive, more elite lineups as the year goes on. So you're able to keep all of them. And, on the flip side, if you choose poorly, you will lose value. But the advantage really lies in being able to increase that team budget and being able to spend more money as the year goes on.
Yeah, and that we'll move on from the top 5 drivers after this, but just a way to visualize this for any of the players listening and looking at the app at the same time. Out of the top 5 drivers, I think we would all agree all have a shot at St. Pete on the podium, if not in position 1, potentially, right? So if you signed a Joseph Newgarden at 24.4 and currently ranked 5th, Joseph Newgarden wins St. Pete, there's a really good chance Newgarden's value is going to go up, and then you reap that reward for the future. So how that relates to contracts is, as those contracts expire, that's money you could spend. So if you sign one race contracts, it's Mike's pro tip strategy. If you sign a one race contract, you're blocking yourself from that driver for the next race, right? So when I'm signing a one race contract, it's because I would bet money that this person is undervalued and is going to have a favorable result. And I don't want this person long term. I want that quick win. I want, hey, I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to make 1.5. And that's going to allow me to then get the driver that I think is going to really do well at the next race, at that next tier up. And those exist. As we get into the next couple of groups of drivers here, I think we do have some opportunities for drivers I would consider for a one race contract, even for St. Pete. One race contracts come with that risk reward. If you sign them for a one race contract, they perform poorly, you lose that money, and you're blocked out of them for the next race. Conversely, there's also a lot of upside. So that's how we would think about basics of contract length.
And I will say real quick before we get, really into the weeds, if anyone is confused, we do have game guides on our website, in the app. And also we will be doing shows leading up to the races that are a little more focused on, strategy, lineup building, more in depth on just how the contracts work, maybe like what we'd recommend on how to structure a team. Just like little tips like that, because I know there is a little bit of a learning curve with this game for anyone who's new to it. And it functions a little bit differently than maybe your typical fantasy game, but don't be alarmed. Don't freak out. Like we'll be here to walk you guys through it. And, it is one of those things that, once you play a few weeks, you start to get the hang of it. And it's a very fun way to do it.
It's kind of a business thing. I was just going to say, like, if you put your mind in the place of like Chip and Roger and, and guys like that, like get in that business mold, that business mind. You get into that, you're saying, okay, I'm going to treat this like this is my business right here. I'm a race team owner. Mm-hmm. And when you do it, that I know for me, it works better that way, because when I frame my mind in that way with this game, it's like, hey, sky's the limit, So that's one little weird piece of advice that I would probably give for getting the most out of the contracts game. And that's what I think separates it from everything else.
I agree. All right, let's get into that next tier of drivers. 6 through 9. Herta, O'Ward, Kirkwood, Lundgaard. I already think we've got some value here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Chase, go ahead. You're fired up. I want to hear your take.
All right. This is what I've been waiting to talk about. So let's talk about Colton Herta. Okay. Yeah. Herta, great guy. When I look at Andretti Racing right now, where they obviously are one of the fan favorites. He's one of the guys that has a lot of attention from people, not only in the IndyCar world, but in the Formula One world as well. So a lot of people are kind of like keeping their eyes on him, what he's going to do. And with that new F1 team coming, that's been where all the story's at. So I feel like this is going to be a year where Colton is going to probably deliver a little bit more than we have seen in the past. I mean, he's coming. He's the last victor. He won in Nashville. Going into this race, Andretti's got a really pretty good history at St. Pete. So if I'm looking for somebody to get on more than one race, it's going to be Colton, because of what we've seen him do at Thermal. Obviously, like we've seen him be able to kind of get up front, take care of business up there, even though maybe it didn't work out, for the win. It's one of those deals where that Andretti has the force and they have the power, and they could easily take over one of these next 3 races that we're going to be watching. So I feel like Colton is a must. And then the second part of that for me is another Andretti driver. And I don't want to be disrespectful to Pato, because I do think Pato's got what it takes at St. Pete, but Kirkwood as well is another one that I feel like is going to really step up this year. He's kind of one of these emerging personalities. He's already shown that he can take care of business on the street courses. So keep an eye on Andretti in this bracket is what I would say. And if you're going to sign a guy to more than one race, let it be from that team in this tier.
Yeah, those are both very solid choices. What I'll say in favor of Pato Award is he is, I think, consistently going to be the best McLaren driver, like week in, week out. And one of the ways that you score points in our game is by being the best driver on your team. So potentially a little bit of edge there, in addition to Award being a legitimate threat to win races most weeks. So Award's going to be great. I do think that Herta Kirkwood's going to be exciting to watch this year. I'm totally with you there. Um, I think Herta has something to prove. Like I think that maybe he wants to prove to the wider world that he belongs on the biggest stages in motorsports, and yeah. So and also he had a heck of a back half of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
If they can ride that momentum, like I think that he can give those pesky Ganassi guys a run for their money.
Yeah, and Herta and Award in this tier are extremely interesting because, unlike some of those guys in the top 5, these two they have a lot of room to increase salary here and to grow. You look at those top 5, yes, they're going to perform, they're going to put up points, but they're going to fluctuate a little bit. There's a lot more room here for Herta or Award if they get off to a really hot start. This could be a huge thing for your lineup if you've got them for a few races and they put together a nice little string.
And I would say that so far the fans agree, because the league adoption percentage so far from lineups that have been set, players who have made selections in the IndyCar league, Pato is on over 50% of people's lineups already. So there's wide sentiment in right now in putting 21.6 million of your $100 million budget towards Pato for St. Pete. I don't disagree. I feel like we should give Lundgaard a little bit of context here though as well. Like he's in this bracket, he's in a McLaren.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He's going to be the wild card. He's going to be the real wild card this year. I'll say that much. He's already kind of a wild card as it is. I don't know if you guys saw the photos of him with the wig on in the McLaren team photos. Nice Britney Spears blonde wig. He's out here, dude. So anytime you got a guy that's got that kind of wild card mentality, you know what's possible. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
Upside and downside.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be an interesting team this year, and hopefully a bit more stability than they had last year, where like they went into the season with one lineup, and then one of their drivers hurts himself before the season even starts, and that sort of sets off a spiral of driver changes there. I like to see what McLaren can do with some more stability this year and some better luck on that front. So yeah, it's some new faces there, but certainly don't discount any of the new guys.
Agreed. I'll answer one question in chat we did accidentally skipped over from Brandon. Hey guys, love the app. Enjoyed the first week of the NASCAR League. Awesome. Thank you for joining NASCAR, and excited for IndyCar and F1 here soon. So are we. Any chance we can get Grid Rival on a website for leagues and props and not just the app? Thanks. We are an app through and through. That's going to be how we operate for the 25 season and likely the 26. We did have a web app many moons ago, and truth is no one used it. And we're a very, very small team. It takes a lot of overhead to run an Android and an iOS app, a tremendous amount of overhead. Having a third system just makes it so we're slower on everything. So we are way more efficient at getting new features and bug fixes out on the apps than splitting our attention between that and the web app. So that's why we don't have a web app anymore and won't for the 25 season. maybe things change in 26, but don't hold me to it. So with that answered,
I just want to say I'm happy that at least somebody was able to enjoy week 1 of the NASCAR league.
yeah,
I went
I enjoyed
6
it
for
until
6
like
with I went 6 for 6 with DNFs. So I did not have a single driver take the checkered flag, unfortunately.
I enjoyed it until the last 20 laps.
I threw my remote at the couch with Chris Bell, and then my wife just grabbed it and she put on. I've been talking about it all week. She just randomly just put on Yellow Jackets. She's a big Yellow Jackets fan, that show, and so she just turned it, and I didn't even say anything. So I didn't even finish watching the Daytona 500. I looked on X, and I saw William Byron one. I was like, oh, classic. I was like, all right. Looked at my lineup, red. Like it was over. Yeah. So yeah, glad that Brandon enjoyed.
yeah. I know Ryan didn't, because last year Ryan was one of the top NASCAR players globally in our game, consistently a top 10 player, and I think you had 60 DNFs for Daytona, right?
Yeah, I finished. Yeah, I was
Okay,
like
so
the
this
number
is good.
2. Yeah, I was good at this, and then it's hard to be good at Daytona. I don't need to go all Denny Hamlin actions detrimental here, but I think we all know what he said.
That was a great time. Great talk. Yeah.
All
A
right,
lot of people in that boat, though, and not too late to join one of those leagues if you're interested in NASCAR as well. We'd be happy to have you. Samuel Haynes wondering, was there any thoughts having a manufactured team component to the IndyCar game? Hard with limited numbers of both. So yeah, there's only 2 engine manufacturers, unfortunately. So nothing really there as far as Chevy versus Honda. That said, one of the things we do have in this game is points for being the best driver on your team. The best driver on each team will score 5 fantasy points every race. And
That's awesome.
For your convenience, in the app, there's a little badge next to every driver with what team they're on, be it Ganassi, Penske, Andretti, McLaren, or one of the teams we have yet to discuss as we go through the driver salaries. But no, you can't individually take a team like you can in the F1 game if you're familiar with that, where that is very much a part of that game.
Shout out to Pit Dogs, though. I will say that. Shout out to Pit Dogs everywhere. All the guys working hard in the pits, the team, shout out to them. Maybe Pit Dogs in the future. Maybe we'll do something for those guys.
Yeah, we it was a discussion point, but ultimately we decided to go with the 6 drivers instead of the 5 drivers and one team component. But that's something, we're gonna collect feedback all year from all the IndyCar players, what we liked, what we want to see in the future, and that's the benefit of us having an app and a small team and being race fans. We're playing the game with y'all. So like, if you're experiencing it, we're experiencing it. And those are the things that go into next year's game, because we always try and bring something every year. But let's jump into, in my opinion, the most exciting group of drivers, 10 through 15. The reason that to me, this is the most exciting group of drivers is because this is the top talent driver eligible driver. So I'm just going to talk about talent driver for a second, just so we're all on the same page, then we can get into the actual drivers. Talent drivers on the game score double points. On your My Team screen, there's a star next to every driver on your lineup that's under 18 million in contract value. You click the star, and that will give you double points on that driver's result as long as you have a full lineup of 6 drivers. So you have your 6 drivers, you click a star next to the one driver under 18 million that you're putting all the eggs in that basket, and then you get double points. So Marcus Ericsson, 17.4, is talent driver eligible, meaning he could score double points for his result for St. Pete. Only caveat on last piece of strategy I'll say is if Ericsson crushes it and goes above 18 million in contract value, he's not talent driver eligible, even if he's still under contract with you. The cutoff is the value, not your contract length. So that's something, if you're really bullish on Ericsson's results for St. Pete, good talent driver selection. You might only be able to get that chance once unless he has a DNF and then comes back down at the talent driver eligibility.
Yep.
I'll say real quick. I was just gonna say that now this league this spot that we're in right now, we're going over these 5 drivers. I know some of the Meyer Shank guys are in here, and with Felix Rosenquist, if he is in this tier which just double checking, obviously.
He is.
This is the make or break area, in my opinion, right? Like for your lineups. So Felix is obviously, for me, like one of those guys that I'm flocking to. We know that he can position himself well in qualifying. He's at 13.2, I believe, right now.
Yep.
And
That's right.
if I'm also getting points for the best driver on my team, I mean, it's him, and it's it's him, and it's Marcus Armstrong. So I feel like that's the guy. Like out of this whole thing, like that's the guy. Like, so just my take there. I think that's the guy. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of intriguing choices at that tier, and Rosenquist is definitely one of them. Definitely a vital choice. Yeah, we shall see. So, like, let's go through some of these other drivers on this tier. So, Marcus Harrison. So, another Andretti car. He's at the top of the, as Mike went over, he's sort of at the top of that talent tier. And then Alexander Rossi on a new team, Ed Carpenter Racing, and 11th, 16 million. I think there's some intrigue there. Like him and Rasmussen are the two drivers for Ed Carpenter Racing. Rasmussen is somewhat further down the order, which would seem to favor Rossi being the better Ed Carpenter car most weeks. It'll be interesting to see what he can deliver with a new team. If we go through the combined test results, like here's the thing, like reading the test results is sort of like a black magic, right? So like you see him with a time that was down the order, but then again, Scott Dixon also like basically didn't do much according to the combined results I'm looking at. So it's like
2 laps. He had a problem. He only had
yeah,
2
he had a
laps.
problem. That's the thing. I
Yeah.
mean, like there's always somebody who's the darling of winter testing and somebody who doesn't look good in winter testing, and they get on the track when it counts, and it's the other way around. So maybe don't hit the panic button there. And Santino Ferrucci driving for AJ Foyt. So what do we think about him? So it's Ferrucci and David Malukas at the AJ Foyt Racing.
I'd say I'm gonna hold on Santino for a while. I would probably look to start factoring him in when we get closer to May, when we get closer to ovals. I feel like even though Santino got the pole at who he was in Portland, he was able to do that. AJ Foyt, they've got the Penske partnership, which I'm not going to say it's going to be all ovals only for Santino, but I know my strategy, just trusting my instinct and my gut, I'm probably not looking to have anything with him until we get closer to the big show at the end of May.
Yeah, I agree. And if you look at the price, you have Santino's 14.6, Rosenquist 13.2. Yeah, I think
probably a little bit more bang for your buck, but
yeah.
Who knows? You could be wrong. It's the thing with the street horses is like if something goes wrong, you usually ends up in a wall. So the floor is somewhat lower at the street horses than at other tracks. So
I just think it's such a make or break area. It's like it's like for this area right here specifically, it's just there's risk with all these guys, right? But in terms of just trying to mitigate that as much as possible, either I would say this, either looking at Rosenquist, and look, Armstrong is not that bad either. I mean, yeah, he was brand new coming in. This is a new team for him. So he was with Ganassi last year. He had some finishes that were pretty decent. So, if you want to roll the dice a little bit, I just feel like MSR is probably the best place to go. And then with Rossi at ECR, the only thing there is like, I don't doubt Rossi's driving ability. And I know you're a Rossi guy, Will. So, I see the T and I feel it. And I'll say this much with him. It's just like the cars look great. We just got to see, how they have figured out their internal components at ECR. Like what, like you want to get excited about it because it's a big name going to this team. It's just, I'm not putting too much into the test results that we saw at Sebring, but I'm probably going to be a little more timid on Rossi in the very beginning. And I think that there are some places where I will be signing him this year for sure. I just want to see what things look like after St. Pete. Thermal Club, I feel like it's going to be wide open, and that can be that can be mostly who can get up there, in that top 3 to start the race off from what we saw last year anyway.
And I do think Rossi and Ed Carpenter Racing as a whole are names that you tend to think of a lot as you get into the month of May, where like both of those are usually threats at the Indy 500 in particular. So like maybe that's another one where we just sort of wait and see, but then we strike golds when it counts. And
Agreed.
I see a question about qualifying. No, we don't do points for qualifying in our IndyCar game. What you do get is points for positions gains from your qualifying result to the race finish. So you can definitely set your lineup knowing how people qualified and hope that they improve. Like maybe somebody has a bad qualifying, like maybe Dixon has to start at the back for whatever reason, and then he becomes a lock to sign him up and collect a bunch of position points. But so no qualifying points, unfortunately, in this game.
William, I have a question for you about that.
Sure.
Say I qualified in a certain position, but I don't start in that position on the starting grid. How does that work on the app?
That's a great question. So it is based on where you qualified before any penalties. So if you pick up a penalty and you have to start at the back, like you make an engine change or something, then that doesn't apply to your net position gain points. It's going to be like where you had originally qualified, like, or if you had to go to a backup car because you crashed in practice. So that is a little snag.
I like the PSA style of that question. Like, has this ever happened to you?
It might have happened once or twice.
Yeah.
I think that's happened to a lot of us, dude.
Yeah.
A lot of different ways.
Another
Hopefully we won't have too much of it.
Another salary question. Since salaries can change throughout a contract, what happens if your salaries increase beyond your team value? Well, if you have a driver signed and their salary goes up, your team value goes up. Your team value is just the value of your contracts plus however much you have in the bank. So if those driver values go up, your value goes up. So, and that's the trick. We want to build that number so that we have a lot of flexibility as we get through the season and have our pick of drivers. Will drivers change based on qualifying, or are they set? They're set. Those salaries are set. They won't change until after the first race of the year, and they'll change after every race.
Yeah, and I think before we move on from this tier 2, it's important to note that I think Chase mentioned it earlier. Like, this really is the make or break tier for your lineup. It's really easy to sit down and start putting things together and be like, oh, do I want Pelot? Do I want power? Yada, yada, yada. Like, there's not as much volatility up there, where here there is a ton of volatility. You're down into that talent driver range. So like double points are in play. And when you look at the lineups after St. Pete's that scored the best, I think you'll see it's very common that all of those lineups chose the correct driver kind of in this tier and put them as talent driver. And whoever shines here, because there is that opportunity, is going to have a very strong weekend.
Yeah. And just clarification for all the new players, is anyone below 18 million, right? So like as we go down the list from here, everyone's talent driver eligible, but more often than not, this group of drivers is going to be your kind of most reliable talent driver to score the most talent driver points for the weekend, those double points. But like as we get into the next tier of drivers, this is the value. This is where there's value. So this is where these drivers are priced at a point where if you put them on your lineup and they perform well, they are going to score not only a lot of fantasy points that you might want to consider them making them talent driver, they're going to increase. They could increase significantly to add to your team value, which then when the contract is over, you have to spend on new drivers in the future. So I'm very excited. I think we also had a comment about this. I think, yeah, Drake said, keep an eye on those 18 to 21 spots. I agree. I agree with you. So this next tier is where you should spend some time making your selections on who you think is undervalued here, who is going to outperform their current rank to get that value. Who do you guys like from this group?
I'll start by just saying that for me, when we're going into big value, would you say we would probably kick this off with Ray Hall at 10-4 for the next 5.
It starts at Malukas.
Malukas.
Yes.
Okay,
You can
so
talk about Graham
Malukas,
Rahal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he can be
Yeah.
included.
I feel like he kind of got skipped over.
Oh,
a little
sorry.
bit in the last one.
Sorry, Graham
I'm
Rahal.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, I mean, like he knows that he can. Just quickly on Graham. Like Graham's probably not somebody that I'm gonna be looking at to have on like long-term contracts or anything like that. But there are a couple of places where I think that we've seen him. Usually they qualify, towards the back a little bit. So like that points, scooping up the coins essentially is what you're looking for from him from a few different places. But out of the budget plays that we're talking about now, the guy that I think that we're going to see bust out of here this year, and it's kind of a no-brainer because he's with McLaren, is Nolan Siegel. So it's he's at 7.6 million. And yeah, there's maybe some unknowns to the IndyCar fans will look at, and maybe there's a lot of IndyCar fans out there that are like, well, look what happened with McLaren and all this year. He is in a ride that is geared to perform and excel. He is young, he is hungry. So he may not have some of the best qualifying runs, and he may qualify a little bit more towards I don't think we're going to see him out of the top 15 much. But I mean, I think that as long as he knows that he's sticking to his performance places, he's going to be able to be kind of a consistent guy that you're going to see be able to move up, maybe a few spots pretty much every race. And that little bit of just chipping away every race, that little bit of consistency is one of those plays that I would probably look to sign to more of a, maybe a longer term play and just kind of like let it ride, and that way I can focus on some of the other guys that are in the higher areas. So with him being at 7.6, I don't mind that one at all. And then obviously we got Connor, my boy Connor Daly in this spot right here. And a lot of people are going to probably wait till May. He's one of those guys that people are going to be looking to wait till May with. I think that's perfectly fine and acceptable. But just in the beginning front like this, Malukas, I'm probably just he's going to be one of those wait and sees for me. But I think Siegel is going to be the guy that is the most likely to bust out of this area and gain some value.
I especially can't wait to see what he does. Like once we get to May, where he did go through the month of May last year. Like even if he didn't get into Indy last year, like he drove the wheels off that car, and that was, he certainly left it all out there. I can't wait to see what he does in arguably better equipment in the second go round at Indy, and then as we get to the back half of the season, like you'll get to the tracks where he ran an IndyCar last year, like as he came in last year. And second time around, I think there's going to be a lot of upside there. And he's in a McLaren, so like this is theoretically much better equipment than he had, potential race winning equipment. And I think there is a lot of upside with Nolan Siegel. I think Connor Daly might be another one. Like I might go Daly just a little bit earlier at the price. I think there's going to be some bang for the buck there. As far as where we have him slotted, like if he could finish like 11th or 12th, there's going to be points just for beating his average that we gave him. Like we've assigned him an average of 18th place. If you beat your 8 race average, you get points that way. Just a little bit more incentive to look down at all 27 drivers as possibilities. So there's that. And then I do think he's going to beat Stingray Rob fairly often. So I think Connor Daly could actually have a lot of value there.
I agree. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, and I think when you look at this cluster of drivers down here, you're looking for anything that can be a significant differentiating factor. And I think number one on that list is, hey, one of these guys is driving a McLaren, and none of these other guys are. So
I agree. So looking through the app, first I'm gonna make a prediction of my lineup that I'm gonna share now, and you're gonna see me change it every week as we get as we get closer. But I'm looking at Nolan for potentially 5 race contract out the gate, because if he goes up in value the way I think he can go up in value, or I hope he can go up in value, I might not even want him for the 500 and switch to someone a little bit more experienced on ovals at that point. So I'm excited about Nolan early in the season. However, the players so far disagree. Malukas is so far the number one selected driver from this group, with over 40% of lineups so far selecting Malukas from this group. So we might be missing something, guys. We
And like last year, like I think that was the what could have been last year. So I had alluded to McLaren having some instability last year. David Malukas was supposed to be driving for McLaren, and then he broke his wrist and he was out for a few months.
Mhm.
And then he ended up out of McLaren and in some different cars. And maybe this is a potential redemption arc for him driving for AJ Foyt. So like I think there's some intrigue there, and people want to see that. And you know what? I'm happy to see a comeback. Like that's one of the fun things about this sport.
Mhm. We didn't hit on VK at all, did we?
Arenas VK just announced last week to Dale Coyne Racing,
Yeah.
and yeah, he's another guy who I think he's got a lot of talent, and it's a fickle sport. It's kind of hard to get a ride sometimes, and glad he's still on the grid, and like we'll see what he can do. Like this will be a new team for him, sort of a last minute thing. Hopefully he settles in and the team settles in well, and he can surprise us potentially.
yeah, I think too, when you look at it, part of dealing with some of these back markers and the lower value guys is how high is the floor. And I would argue that VK probably has a higher floor than some of these guys just with his experience,
Mhm.
which there is something to be said for that. We talked about the talent driver pool and how you're looking for, big points, volatility, and that's where you want to build your lineup. Part of this too is managing your floor. You don't want to go out there and have 3 guys DNF. VK could, but I would be willing to wager that he has a little bit higher floor than some of these guys down here, and it might be worth paying that extra 1.3 versus that tier that we have all sitting at 3.5 million.
Yeah, I agree. We got a question from Ryan. Will a fantasy team benefit from a driver's salary increase if the contract length is only 1 race, or does the driver have to be signed for more than 1 race to benefit from a team salary cap? No, 1 race contracts are the YOLO in the app. That like that's when you take a 1 race contract because you are darn sure that this driver is underpriced and is going to outperform, and you're going to reap the benefits in just 1 race, and you do not care about not having that driver for the upcoming race. So, I'm not going
So
to
like
speculate on who's a YOLO right now, but
it benefits your value if the driver has a good race and they go up in value. Uh, of course, if they have a bad race, then you're going to lose some value. So as the contracts roll off, whatever they were worth at the time that the contract expired, that's what goes back into your bank. Hopefully, that's more than you signed him for. So yeah, regardless of the length, that's how it'll work.
yeah.
Let's see. So something else. Drake wondering, will the one-offs for the Indy 500 be on the app for the race? I don't think we've decided that yet. We may just keep it to the 27 full-timers in the fantasy leagues. Not sure yet. I think that's the answer right now. But we'll
We,
certainly have that figured out as we get closer to May.
Yeah, will be a lot of internal conversation about that, and I think directly with IndyCar, and we'll see who the one-offs are and what it looks like. But our ethos is always to try and have the more driver coverage than you could find anywhere else. So we're always pushing the envelope for that. So we can't commit to anything right now, but we could always promise we're always doing that.
I want to make sure you guys got me because my computer pulled a kickflip. Yeah. So all right.
We got
So
you back
it
now.
sounds good. Yeah, I think my box. I think I'm about to get a new computer. I think my box ended up just like doing so. It was just like too much power, and it pulled. I'm in the 90s, so you know. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad your compact Presario is rebooted back up now.
All right. Yeah, we're good. We're here.
All right, cool. We've got our next section of drivers here, 21 through 27. So now I feel like I'm starting all these with like a strategy pro tip instead of just going right into the drivers. If I could give advice to anyone who's listening right now, if you're signing Alex Palou at 30 million, and then you're coming down here to sign a $3.5 million driver, consider maybe not signing Palou and signing someone else from the top 5, and then coming up a little bit here. It would be like a strategy pro tip. There, in my opinion, there's a lot of unknowns and results here on race 1, with a lot of drivers. Do any of you guys disagree? Like, this is where this is where I'm struggling with my own lineup.
I don't hate signing Callum Ilott.
That's right. Callum is
Another
in
experienced
3.5.
hand, like brand new team with Prima.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this will next weekend. That'll be their first weekend as an IndyCar operation, like on a race weekend. But if you wanted to sign Callum Ilott, I don't think that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
If you think that one of these guys is going to surprise with a good result, and like this is where you get your value, right? If one of these guys has a big day, like and a street horse like Long Beach, not Long Beach. Long Beach is April. A street horse like St. Petersburg, rather. Like you could just have like 5 cars DNF, and everybody gets a 5-spot bump just by surviving, and there could be some upside there. So like if you think one of these guys can bring the car home in one piece, like there's upside probably. So
yeah, I would say that I think that with Callum, he's somebody that like I wouldn't mind throwing a 1 race contract to, right? Like I don't think we're gonna see so much coming from him like at Thermal. And then another thing too is I mean I think the biggest thing that a lot of people tend to forget is like pit strategy is so important, right? Like you got to know that your teams, like when they're going in or whenever you're coming in like that, you're going to cycle and it's not going to slow you down. So that, I mean, if I'm thinking about that specifically when I'm looking at these kind of contracts, like the 1 race for Callum is definitely probably something that I would look to do. But for something longer than 1 contract, I would look. I know that this is probably maybe not someone that a lot of people in IndyCar are just anyone playing might even think to look at, but Christian Ramison at ECR. I feel like he's just coming in. We saw him do a little bit last year with ECR, but this year is like I feel like this is like the proving ground year, right? And they're trying to prove a lot more. They got brand new sponsorships. They've got these new cars that look great, and he is a kid that we have seen be able to have upside. And they've been in this series for quite some time. So I kind of like him in this bracket. So Christian Ramison, ECR, like that's probably the guy that I would think would be the best, just absolute dart. We'll call him a dart throw. Yeah.
yeah, I like it. Like that's what we're doing at this tier. Like we're trying to find the diamonds.
Yeah,
The diamonds in the rough.
I know William mentioned the Prima guys. I'd look at the Prima guys as well, just because they're the only team down here without any. They're both the drivers are in this tier. Every other driver down here has a teammate at a higher salary, and that's not to say that they're going to get outperformed by said teammate, but it is far more likely. So you do have a little better chance at maybe snagging some teammate points with the Prima guys, knowing that they're on a little bit level footing versus a guy like maybe Rasmussen. Like, I would be willing to bet he's probably not beating Rossi Anything can happen, but I think you just have a little bit more of an opening with those Prima guys down there. But, at the end of the day, if someone can confidently rank all of these guys and know exactly where they're going to finish and who's going to be the guy that exceeds, I don't know, send me a message, like, let's grab a beer and talk through this, because I would love to know that.
Yeah. And it's all fun and games until a yellow flag just totally throws your pit strategy out the window, and the back half is suddenly at the front of the grid. Sam with a question: how do improvement points work at the beginning of the season, based on last year's races or their current rank? So what we did was we ranked all of these drivers, and if you tap on any of the drivers in the app and you pull up details on them, there's what's called the improvement index, and your improvement points are based on the finish versus the improvement index. If you're better than that, you stand to score some improvement points. And what we did was we ranked these drivers initially, all 27 of them, from 1st to 27th. And as we go through the season, it will be based on 8 race average finish. But for those missing races, like we obviously have 0 races right now, we fill in that improvement index for all the missing spots. So Devlin DiFrancesco, if I can say his name correctly, I just happened to tap him in the app. We have him with an index of 25. So we're going to consider his average finish to be 25th for St. Petersburg. For thermal, it'll be wherever he finishes at St. Petersburg, and then 7 25th place finishes. So if he's consistently beating that, then he's going to be a lock for improvement points for the first third of the season or so. So it is based on our rankings initially. It'll be based on race results as we get into the season. Hope that answers your question. And yeah, we came up with these ranks as best we could. And there's certainly a lot of room for debate at both the top and the bottom of the grid. And you got to make a choice, though.
Yeah, I will just to emphasize, like, we did not pull these out of a hat. There were countless meetings and hours spent debating and researching. So all of this was very well thought out and took a very long time. So
the point system, to come up with the point system, you wouldn't believe how many simulations they had me running to come up with a point system.
Deep down in Tron, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Jeff, just tuning in. What really is Grid Rival? Does NASCAR Fantasy League now part of this, or is that a separate league? So that is a separate league. So we have fantasy leagues for NASCAR, IndyCar, which is we're the official fantasy game of IndyCar, and also we have Formula One leagues that's starting up in a few weeks, and those are all separate leagues, and we encourage you to play them all. Like, we're all part of leagues in all 3 sports, I believe, and. Yeah, if you've got more questions, we've got a Discord where people are happy to show you around. There's also some game guide videos in the app if you're just getting the feel for the app itself. And we're happy to have you.
Yeah. And if you hit any real roadblocks, you could always email support@gridrival.com for some personalized assistance with any issues or misunderstandings you might be experiencing. I saw another one that we missed. Dre Leal. I've never watched IndyCar.
Next Sunday, St. Petersburg Grand Prix. Watch that. It's a great series.
Yeah.
Like,
Open wheel
IndyCar,
thrills.
I think,
Season share.
I'm not just saying that because we're the official fantasy app of IndyCar. I really like IndyCar.
Mhm.
I've been watching the series for a very, very long time, and I would argue that they have the best on-track product right now as far as major racing series.
I'm coming over from the NASCAR world. Listen, look, I started my journey in motorsports in 2017, writing fantasy articles for NASCAR. And from that time, I was raised on NASCAR, never watched a lick of IndyCar in my life. My father was an IndyCar guy. Mother had no friends. Being from Louisiana, obviously, it was a blessing that I watched racing. So, because nobody around here really did. And so if you are a fan of motorsport, whether it's like F1 or NASCAR, you just have to look at it from a perspective of this is the series where it's all about the driver. It's about the driver and his ability to maneuver a freaking rocket ship on wheels, essentially, around a track for a season. It's fast paced. There's great personalities. This is going to be the year where we finally get to see IndyCar be all that it can be with this new Fox deal that they've got going on. So I say that because in 2021, I went to my first Indy 500. And I will never forget, I wasn't going to go to the race, guys. I don't know how many of you guys have been to, but I literally was going to stay in my RV because I was going to wait to watch the Coca-Cola 600 when we were on our tour that we were doing. And somebody looked at me and they were just like, dude, you're here. Like, why don't you just go? And I'm like, we're here covering IndyCar, but I've never really watched IndyCar. I don't know much about it. I get in there, I sit down, I see them coming around the corner pacing, dude. Everything changed. My whole life changed. I was like, this is like the closest thing to Star Wars pod racing I've ever seen in my life. I was like, this is what I've been waiting for. Ever since then, I have been hooked. And when you see it in person, it's even more gripping. So I would suggest, definitely watch it on Fox. If you can get to a race, go to one because it's so accessible. Everyone is so nice and welcoming, and it's an environment right now where, like, the drivers, the teams, they all know that they have, like William said, the best racing product on the market for real race fans and racing purists. So, and it's going to just continue to evolve. So definitely make sure that you try to get to a race. Definitely watch on Fox. Every race is on local Fox, which is amazing. So a lot more eyes. I'm just really excited for the direction and happy that we're getting to be a part of it. So welcome to IndyCar. I'll put it that way. Welcome.
I've been to the 500 twice myself. It's a heck of a show.
God, Chase, I need you to be like my personal hype man. I'm ready to run through a brick wall. Like, I want to send cars on track right now after that.
That's my brain, dude. I'll be like at Walmart, like in the checkout or something. Like, dude, I'll just be like, just sitting there, just like, we're almost there. It's go time. You know what I mean? Like everything. That's the mentality. We just be moving.
Yeah. And Jeff, you can join NASCAR leagues from the Grid Rival app. If you go to join league, you can search NASCAR leagues, or you can create one of your own. Not too late to join those, even though we're one race in. Still plenty of time. And if you join a league late, we give you a little catch up. We start you, like whoever has the fewest points, we start you with that many points. We don't start you on 0. Mm-hmm. So there's some room to climb. And so definitely if you want to play one of those leagues, check that out in the app. And time to get in. There is time to get in before the next race. Atlanta this weekend for NASCAR. You're going to watch IndyCar. You're going to watch Indy Next. That sounds great. Watch those things. Should be some great racing. And the Indy Next grid has grown in recent times, and that's really great as well.
The Deegster is there now. Haley Deegan. She's coming over, so that's going to be huge for Indy Next. Miles Rowe as well is another guy that I've got my eyes on in this series. Louis Foster just came over from Indy Next. He's now going to be running in the NTT IndyCar series. But yeah, Indy Next is going to be on FS1. I believe they're going to have a lot of practices, things like that there. So you'll be able to catch some of those races finally, because that's a series that was just so under marketed. And I mean, like we talk about how IndyCar had been for so long before Fox came on. So it is great to see that. It's essentially like the Xfinity series to NASCAR, if you're a NASCAR fan. And so that's where the future drivers of the NTT IndyCar series get their kind of start, their development and their playground. Those cars are just as sexy as the NTT IndyCar series cars too. So I know a lot of people give a lot of crap because the car has been the same for so long. It's a sexy car. You have to be honest. So definitely, yeah, check out the next series as well.
Yep, I agree. So I think we've hit them all. I just want to, shameless plug from Samuel, who just said, really enjoying the Grid Rival experience so far. It's incredibly innovative, well thought out, and support has been great so far. Thank you. Let's go. Yeah. So throw our name in there with the Fox deal. Like we're the official app of IndyCar because we're trying to push fan engagement, fun, and IndyCar community to the next level. So tell all your friends, get those league invites out there and build these IndyCar leagues up, and let's go. Yeah, let's go racing.
In a couple of years, when there's a documentary about how IndyCar was saved, it'll be like Fox deal and Grid Rival deal.
Amen, dude.
Hand in hand.
Amen. That's what I'm talking about. Go out with your boys on race day. Have Grid Rival open. All the waitresses and the waiters come. What are you doing right there? We're on Grid Rival. What are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the way you got to approach it. So it's and I mean, it really is though. Grid Rival, it like I am one of those people. I don't choose to partner with companies if I don't feel aligned with them. This is fantasy motorsports innovation at its finest. It is almost like a renaissance right now for it, because sports betting has really just taken over this market. And I feel like finally we are here in this renaissance. I was a fantasy guy and I still am at heart. So that's why I'm here. The show starts now. Put it that way.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Chase. So yeah, that wraps us up for time for now, but don't worry, plenty more content coming for all of our sports and all of the things. So subscribe to the YouTube, set your notifications on, make sure your notifications are on in the Grid Rival app, because we also send notifications to the app for when these things are going to go live, and take the links from these videos and share them in your league chat to all of your league mates, so everyone gets to see the content and learn from what we're trying to share here. So with that,
and when might we be on again? Who's got the schedule for next week? Like, we got some shows coming next week. St. Petersburg preview.
We do.
I think we're going to do some F1 stuff next week as well, as we get closer to the start of that season.
Yep.
Have we got dates for that yet?
Nope, but we'll send them out. But we will be having F1 shows and IndyCar shows. Be a big content week next week.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right, race fans, thank you so much. We'll see you on the app. Okay, stream should be finished. I always wait a couple